Pod.
Rugby pod.
Hello and welcome back to the Rugby Pod. I'm Andy Rowan. Big Jim and Goodey are with me as usual. We'll be looking back at all the festive action from the Premiership, and we'll be joined by presenter Gabby Logan for a chat about Doddie 2022. So settle back, enjoy, and make sure you're subscribed on Spotify. Happy New Year, lads. How was it? How was Christmas? How was New Year's?
Start a positive, James. Come on. We got a little bit negative. I say we. You got a little bit negative towards the back end of 2021. There's 1 week you're up, next week you're down. Give me a positive. You had an amazing Christmas and an amazing New Year. Nicola Sturgeon is leading the troops in Scotland to Party Central. No, it's not going to happen, is it? How was it, James?
Not a lot of positivity going on apart from love in the Hamilton household, tears of frustration and joy, anxiety to wondering when the rain is going to stop, and desperate to get to New Year's Eve because me and the missus went on an absolute mad bender. We had a cup of tea, went to bed at 10:30. So not a lot has happened. I sound like a broken record, lads. As we know, this probably sounds very similar to last year. There's a big build-up to Christmas. We're thinking bit of normality. Hamiltons are going on holiday. The house is getting robbed. Coming back, bit of drama. And straight into Christmas and New Year. No holiday. Bit of drama. In terms of kids can go to school, can't go to school, and then into New Year, 10:30, wake up in the morning, kids have had us up all night because they've had too many chocolates and sweets that they got bought by the grandparents who just dumped them on them and left. And Happy New Year, fellas. Can you believe it's 2022? How weird does it feel? To say 2022, I mean, 2021 was weird. And the year 2000 as well, because it was a millennium. Actually, it's fairly normal, actually. It just sounds like a high number, is all I'm trying to say. But it's Happy New Year, is what I'm trying to say. The Hamilton household, anyone with kids out there knows that it ain't the American dream. Andrew, you'll know, if you've got Pablo and you've got cleaners, it's probably closer to the American dream than the Hamilton household. But it was better this year. The kids are at an age now where they just fight as opposed to cry and fight. So they moan and fight, which is a step up and a step towards that American dream that you see on all the Christmas programmes. But Merry Christmas to all the listeners. Happy New Year. It's been a few weeks since recording, Andrew, as we know, and a bit out of sorts, just like, I was fiddling with the mic and, making sure the audio was all switched on and, ready to be back in the studio because it's January. But we're not in the studio. We're in the cupboard still.
What about you, Goody? How was yours, mate? You had the cleaner, you had the babysitter, the nanny. Was yours more the American dream?
No, it wasn't. We had a good and a bad Christmas, and I'll start with the bad. My old man and my mum caught COVID before Christmas. My old man went to hospital pre-Christmas. He's still in hospital, which isn't great, but hopefully he's on the mend, which is one thing. But the good, obviously, the kids. It's all about the kids, isn't it? They absolutely love it. We haven't seen the grandparents over Christmas, so it's kind of a weird one. Same as last year, really, because if you cast your minds back a year, everyone had a load of plans for Christmas. Then the tier system came in. You couldn't go from one tier to another. And we've avoided COVID as a family completely until this year, really. My dad caught it just before Christmas. So hopefully the old man will listen to this at some point, and we'll be wishing him all the best. And he'll be out because he can't listen to it in hospital because his iPhone's knackered, apparently. So I need to get him a new iPhone when he comes out afterwards. But yeah, it's like Jim said, we've had 2 weeks where we've not had the nanny. She's had time off and she's come back today. It will be a bank holiday here in the UK. Monday, the 3rd of Jan. And it was the best Christmas present I could have got when she walked back through the door, let me tell you. Because trying to find things to do with the kids when it's pissing down the rain. And with the twins, you've got to just take them out at some point for 5 or 6 hours in the day to tire them out. Because if you just stay at home, you can rely on the TV a little bit. When the missus went out for a few hours, I was like, girls, what do you want to watch? What do you want to watch for a couple of hours? And I got a bit of peace. But apart from that, we've been here, there and everywhere looking after the kids, taking them to places, as you do, trying to have a bit of fun, but also with in the back of the mind knowing that they haven't seen the grandparents. And I've still got loads of Christmas presents wrapped up at home to give the family because we haven't been able to see any of them. My brother's kids had chicken pox. So it was, in terms of family, it was a bit of a nightmare, but hopefully everyone's on the mend and we can start 2022 on a positive. And it's great to be back on the pod, guys.
So upbeat. Aren't we, Andy Rose? So upbeat. Listen to us.
Just honest.
Now,
just honest. That way. Just honest.
Andrew, we are.
Hard.
We've always said, mate, there's a fine line between honesty and negativity, and we are borderline in both of them fucking things, is all I know. And to throw into the mix during Christmas, as people know who follow me on social media, put out your good life, we've got a dog. The dog was escaping, jumping over the fence. What the family didn't realise, and it's a bit of a confession, I left the gate open many a time. You don't want to have a dog, 4 kids, and it absolutely hosing it down. I was whispering in his ear, I was saying mercy. If anyone's going to leave, it's you, mate. Off you go, big fella. But the neighbours kept bringing him back, didn't they? So,
do we need to have a New Year's resolution to be more positive?
Let's own up to last year's New Year's resolution. I think I had 2. I maybe had 4. Let's just go with the 2 that I can remember. One was to read more.
How did that go down?
I read 1 book and I actually finished it.
What was it?
I finished it into the new year. I know, madness. I read 1 book and it was to be on my phone less. And from looking at the screen time on my phone, it is down 6%. So
that's a win.
Well, 6% is a lot, isn't it? When you're on there a lot, 6% of a lot's a lot. So my New Year's resolutions from last year, I've actually come through. Read more. So I read a book. I don't even know if I read a book the year before, and screen time is down. So if I was to give you a New Year's resolution, this is a hard one for me. I'm going to hit you with it. Be positive.
Not going to happen.
In the house, don't shout at the kids more than 10 times a day. I'd love to say travel. I'd love to say travel, experience different things. This is one, right? This is one. Age slower. I looked at a picture of myself 2 years ago, and my goodness me, I look good. Phoebe took one of me sleeping on the sofa, and genuinely, I'm not even 40 yet, I look 52. There goes the question, doesn't it? Andrew's obviously thrown a load of money at it. Gastric band, hair job, tags have been done, the lot. I've not thrown any money at it. So my New Year's resolution is to throw a shitload of money to look unbelievably good. So you wait until next year when I'm 40. But there you go. Jim Hamilton's New Year's resolution is to throw a shitload of money at how he looks.
And does that include the Belstaff jackets and things like that? Are they going to come back in? Are they?
I'll tell you now. Lid, tags, toes. My toenails need doing. My toenails need taking off to regrow again. Then they're horrid. Like, as in, I think I need to restart them. So lid,
when you walk,
tags,
mate, when you walk
toes.
But when you walk out the house, mate, no one's bothered about your toenails.
Yeah, but I am, because it's
Okay.
it's about the inner. So I'm going LTT: lid, tags, toes, nails.
There we go. One of my favourite phone calls over the Christmas period, though, Andy Rowe, as we're talking about what we got up to. Jim and I have regular phone calls, don't we, Jim? It's mainly when Jim's gone for a drive because he's trying to get out of the house, or when I've gone for a drive to get out of the house. It's both of us, just kid avoidance or miss avoidance. My favourite quote from James Hamilton over the Christmas period, I said, how's things at home? He's like, fucking bedlam. I'm like, okay. He goes, 4 kids, the weather's shit, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, I said, the missus hasn't spoken to me for 2 days. I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, she accused me of just going and hiding in the toilet when it gets tough at home with my phone. I said, mate, amen to that. That's what every bloke does, don't they? They go into the toilet, drop the kegs, get the phone out, sit there for a good half an hour trying to avoid the kids screaming. And I told the missus, and she's like, well, you're exactly the same. So
there are no laws, but I love how you have segued away from your New Year's resolution. Let's get the Andy Good. I've given you mine, LTT. That is mine. What is Andy Good's New Year's resolution? Something that we can hold you accountable for.
Under 100k by...
No, you say that. You've said that for the last 5 years. It ain't unless they can they do a double gastric band? If you're going to throw money at it like me, there's a chance. Are you going to throw some money at it?
Or just work harder, mate, in the gymnasium. It's diet though, isn't it? The missus bought me she's got this thing every year. She buys her old man and me the biggest selection box.
Oh, sorry. The biggest selection box.
The biggest chocolate selection box from Cadbury's. Other chocolate is available, but why would you bother? Cadbury's the way forward. And I'm like, how am I supposed to lose weight? There's about 4,000 calories right there that I've got to get through over the next 2 weeks before I even think about starting to lose weight. So I've been trying to hand it out. And who wants the picnic in a selection box? No one wants to eat the picnic. So I've got
So
to eat
what
it.
you're saying is your missus is the issue, and it's her who needs to sort herself out. She's a feeder, and we'll get her on at some point.
Yeah, I don't think she's a feeder. I think she wants me to snore less. Try and snore less. That'll do, because then she might like me a bit more. But been together 10 years, so who cares?
Who would have predicted Leicester getting to this point in the season and being on the verge of the best start ever to the Premiership season?
It's remarkable, isn't it?
Oh,
Did you,
sorry.
James?
I had them in the top 4. That's all I'm saying. Did I have them top of the log? Unbeaten? No. But like you said, Andrew, remarkable.
They were bottom of the league for about 3 years, weren't they? I don't want to sound too negative, but from where they come from to where they are, they've learned a hell of a lot. And I hold my hands up. Maybe it's because I'm back at the club hosting on match days. I don't know. It might be because of that, but I think mainly it's Steve Borthwick. Actually, Kevin Sinfield, everything that he's done. The players have been through a tough time, and you have to, you go back to every team that's won things consistently. They've gone through a rough spell before, so to get to that level, they've lost finals. You go back over all the Champions Cup finalists, they've lost previous finals, and then they've got their moment. So it's learning about things like that. It's finally, their injury list isn't big. Other teams have got big injuries at the minute, and their squad depth has improved. They've learned a lot under, and Steve Borthwick's had a bit of time, hasn't he? He's been afforded that ability to lose games, try things out over the last sort of season, and then bang, this year they've hit it flying. So it's phenomenal for them.
One thing we didn't touch on, because it happened during the break that we had, and we have to call it out, and we love Ellis Genge and we love Leicester, but the whole way that came out from a content and delivery perspective during COVID, and again, we speak highly of Bristol, we love Leicester. I love the fact that Genge is captain of Leicester, but that is, I would say I'm going negative again. I've got to try and find a positive at it, but that is a low blow, in the sense of Borthwick said he knew a few weeks before it got released. But in terms of where Leicester are, and Genji's a big part of that, being captain, English, everything that's good about Leicester with the South African influence that they've got, and with Fordy leaving, and then Genge leaving, and I know there's a few salary cap things. Jim, stop being so negative. But you do wonder, and you have to ask the question, losing Fordy and losing Genge, I know that it's come out about Genge going to Bristol, and it is slightly old news, but it's good to talk about it, whether there is a problem with balancing the books at Leicester. I don't know, because I just find it very strange. I mean, I've only signed 1 year at Bristol, and he's going home for family reasons, and you can package that up however, and that might well be the reason. So how it's packaged up from a Bristol standpoint, that he wants to go home, and Leicester saying the same, I still think out of all the big news that there's been, Fordy and Genge leaving a club like Leicester, who are top of the league, unbeaten in Europe, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's something 100% legit going on. I don't know, Andrew, you're closer in terms of to that side of the game. Have you heard anything or not? Or is it just straight that Genge wants to go home wearing his Birkenstocks and hugging Pat Lam and saying, mate, it's not about the money, but where's the 750 grand? Because I'm taking it.
Yeah, the thing I didn't understand is when Pat Lam said he's taken a massive pay cut to go home. Whether I agree with that, I don't know, but you can only judge it on what people say, can't you? You can make your own decisions on stuff. But
I don't know how he's taken a pay cut. I mean, he's coming into the prime. He's captain of the best club in England as it stands. He ain't taking a pay cut, surely.
It's old ground though. What you do know and what you can see is Genge played for Leicester Tigers against Bristol after that video came out, and you watch what he put into that Leicester performance. The passion, the pride, the scrums, the battling for every little inch for Leicester, how much he celebrated the victory. He's a player that plays on emotion, with emotion, and it carries him to the levels he gets to by playing on that emotion. And sometimes it spills over. You've seen since he's been captain, very controlled a lot of the time, really impressive. And what he did in that Leicester-Bristol game and how he conducted himself, even though the Bristol fans are singing to him, he's coming home, he's coming home, he's coming, Genge's coming home.
Genge's coming home. I love the songs.
It was pantomime stuff at times, but he was doing everything he can to to make Leicester win. And he said he loves the club, but he's made a decision. Only, and I've listened, Jim. We've both left clubs, gone to new clubs, wanted to stay at clubs and still left or whatever. And it's only an individual's decision, isn't it? So you can only judge him on what his family, and we don't know inside his own family what has motivated him to go back, apart from, there might be some family issues that we don't know about, that he wants to be close to. So you can only respect his decision, but you can only respect what he does on the field. And when he's doing it in the way he's played this year and the way he's led, you tip the slipper to him. And it's like anything. If someone's acting up a bit, we can call them out because it's our platform, and we can give our opinion on that as well. And the video was poorly timed. Whoever's decision that was has had a shocker. And I don't think it was Ellis Genge's, from what I say. But who in the Leicester team is going to say, Genge, what are you doing? Because he'll fill them in. So, exactly. So
I think I did say that, didn't I? I'm sorry.
Jim, you touched on it. Something doesn't seem quite right. Well, there have been in the news about a potential salary cap breach. Let's talk about that. What do you guys know? It's
historic. It's allegations. I sound like a bloody lawyer. I sound unbelievable. If my missus could hear me, she'd be melting.
Is she talking to you? You're hiding in the toilet again,
now.
Jim?
No, we're back now, actually. So she's a good friend of mine. And again, only going based on what we've heard and the rumour mill and the grapevine, it doesn't sound anywhere near as serious as what we saw at Saracens, but it seems like there potentially is something there. There's, again, how it's all done is kept under wraps. They've obviously released a statement saying that it's being looked at, and that was always the worry, wasn't it? The worry was always that with what happened to Saracens, there'd be question marks over other clubs. Leicester wasn't one of the clubs that I would have thought, especially only going back 5 years, would have been looked at. But clearly something's happened, and it's around image rights. And Goodey, I know, again, something you're probably more up to speed with, because, again, something that turns me on about you is the law that the laws and, the philosophy and them kind of are undercurrents of academia, which just turn me on. But yeah,
I turn you on, James.
No, when you speak in that literature of law, yes. But it seems like there's something there. It doesn't seem that serious. I don't know whether much will come from it. And if it does, I mean, it will be a bit of a shit show, won't it? Because clearly nothing to do with Steve Borthwick, Andrea Pitcham as well, who's the CEO, who was there, but nowhere near in the capacity that she is now as CEO, and the players as well. So watch this space. I don't know, Andrew, do you think we'll hear fairly soon or not? Or do you think it could be just something that goes away quietly?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose from everyone else's perspective, every other club, and when you see this, and obviously I'm hosting on match days now at Leicester, and we both love the club for everything that it helped us in our career and we achieved there as players. It's clear Steve Borthwick's come out, and you can't beat around Jim's bush anymore, but he said it wasn't me, it was before me. So he's basically said, and he's literally said it's nothing to do with him, it's not his fault, it's someone else before. So you go
deny.
Yeah, deny, reaccuse. So he's denied, and he's reaccused the people that were in charge before him. Andrea Pincham, the CEO, she took over in, I think, April 2020. And there was the whole thing around, if you remember, the player wage cuts, then Manu Tuolangi leaves. There's a few other players that leave as well. But this is historically so it's somewhere over the last 5 years. We don't know the facts yet. It is just, at the minute, it's just something that's out in the press. There's no formal kind of disciplinary action taken by Premiership Rugby. So it's an investigation.
Go on, keep saying these words. Go on.
It's an investigation. So has there been a breach is the first question, which is what they're trying to find out at the minute. And it's all based around this company that's been in the press around who paid image rights to players that's now been closed down. So there obviously is something there for the investigation to take place. Then you've got to balance up whether it was a breach that had deliberate intent and what the severity of the breach is. So there's obviously the ramifications in the way the salary cap's written now. The amount that you're over the salary cap dictates how heavy the sanction is, but I think also intent's got to play a big part. So if they've intentionally said, right, we'll just pay them this, and via this company, and we won't declare it, then there is a bigger issue there. But the harsh thing is, And the two things to say about it is whatever punishment Leicester get given if they are found guilty, and that is an if they are found guilty and they're given a punishment, whether it be a fine, whether it be a points deduction, whatever it may be, it's clearly historical, and it's a different group of people, pre the CEO, currently Andrew Pinch, pre-Steve Borthwick, who have had an impact on what would be the situation now. Some of the players would have been impacted by it because there's players that have been there a long time that may have received money via this image rights company. And as long as they've been honest about what's happened, then they shouldn't really be held culpable. But you also have got to look at it and say the rules and regulations are there to be adhered to. This £5 million salary cap at the minute is there to make it A, a level playing field, but also B, to keep the game sustainable. And a lot of other clubs will be looking at it. You hear rumours, like you said before on Jim, there's other clubs that are supposedly paying players to go to dinners that they don't go to. But it's,
did I say that? Did I?
Apparently so, yeah. So, I'm not saying that Leicester haven't done anything wrong. We've got to wait and see what the investigation finds, and then we can sort of look at it from that point of view and say, right, these are the findings. This is the punishment, and yeah, it's justified or no, it's not. And I think you can only live by and work by the frameworks that were in place after the miners' report, which was a thorough investigation of, and there's a big difference between Saracens, what happened to them, and supposedly what's happening to Leicester. Let's not forget, Leicester didn't win a thing. In these 5 years, they haven't won a thing. Yes, they qualified for the Heineken Cup, but they, it's not like they got hand medals back or anything like that, or people are saying you've won so much by cheating. They haven't achieved anything in terms of winning medals, have they? Let's be honest. So it's slightly different from that perspective. But also, I think the other difference is around it with Saracens. I think Saracens were asked, open up your books now, to have a look at the books to see if you are within the salary cap for the current season, which is why they ended up getting relegated, because they were still in breach of the salary cap. So Leicester's is historical. If they're in the clear now in terms of their salary cap for this season, then you've got to judge them on that for this season. But also historically, you've got to look at what the issue is, and if they are found guilty, then you have to punish them. And then intent comes into it, and how much by, and we can only wait and see. You can speculate as much as you want. We don't know all the facts yet, but obviously there's enough there to have an investigation. And when that's completed, we can all kind of have a look at it and judge it from then.
When it first came out, I was like, oh, here we go again. I've been brought into another.
Is it you again, Jim?
Scandal.
Is it you again?
Well, I was worried, and then I pulled out my contracts from Leicester and saw that I was on £5,000 a year, and that went up to about 35 when I was an international. So I was thinking, was it these sweetie machines that Richard Cockrell gave me that we ripped off the wall in Loughborough and stole all the minstrels and blamed it on some Loughborough student? Cockers, I'm sorry. Life's moved on now, but thankfully I've got nothing to do with it at all. Not this time, not that I had anything to do with the Saracens one, but I got brought into it, which, hey, gave me 10,000 more followers on Twitter, so I was happy.
What about your one-bed flat in Luton, overlooking the M1?
No comment.
You mentioned Saracens before. It's been an impressive festive season for them. Big wins over Worcester and Saints, plus the Vunipolas, among others, signing new contracts.
Yeah, if we start on the Vunipolas, I genuinely thought at least one of them would have left. So I think you look at what's happening at Saracens, and again, Goodey's got a different explanation around the narrative of everything, but I think, look, it's clear to see.
Have I?
In terms of how you deliver it, I deliver it with kind of more I deliver it with less emotion, a few cushions around, and a bit of fluff, because that's what I do. And when you look at it and you look at the hard facts of it, they've lost Vincent Koch to Wasps. He wants to be playing against Cov, local derby in a couple of years. I'm joking. Great move for Wasps to be able to sign him. But you look at, obviously, they're trying to balance the books, right? And part of that will be around the Vunipolas. They'll be two of the highest paid players in the Prem, I imagine. They could have went to France to become the highest paid players in France collectively. So I was surprised that they both signed. I think it's great. I think it's a great reflection on them in terms of their loyalty to the club. I'm sure they've taken a pay cut. I don't know that for sure. I'm just going based on what we think they were getting paid, the profile of them, where they are now in their career, the fact that neither of them a first choice for England, which again is a debate for another day. So on that point, for the Vunipolas to re-sign for Saracens is massive. And
are you on the payroll at Saracens to say this, James?
Well, I think it's an obvious one, isn't it? I mean, Mako hated me as well, so I shouldn't be speaking highly of Mako. He thought I was garbage as well. And he unfollowed me.
I'm just saying the way you said they've probably taken a pay cut. You're trying to spin it in a way to get away from the salary cap, are you? I don't know.
I'm making them look good by saying it's not all about the money. But when you're multimillionaires, you can say that, can't you, Andrew? As you know, when you're that rich, you can say it's not about the money. It's like, oh, I'm doing this. It's not about the money. Well, mate, you've got £10 million. Like, of course you can say that. If you've got no money, then it's all about money.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Saracens played Worcester pre-Christmas. Worcester away from home down at Saracens. You knew that was coming. You knew a monster score was coming there. Worcester.
A lot happened though, didn't it? Ashley got let go. There was a lot of emotions going on at the club. They lost all of their marquee signings. So there was a lot going on at Worcester when they went down to Saracens.
It's funny about that. Well, I say it's not funny. I shouldn't say the word funny, but interesting that Ashley's left. And we broke it on the podcast months ago. Months and ago, there was issues. And people were like, nah, they know. Oh, there we go.
Goodey, your mate Chris Boyd wasn't happy after Saints lost to Saracens.
Yeah, listen, Boydie was frustrated. First and foremost, at times in the first half, Saints absolutely dominated possession territory, had a load of opportunities in the 22, had 3 scrums, 2 back-to-back penalties in front of the sticks, pretty close to Saracens' line. And the third scrum, Adam Leal, the referee's given a penalty to Saracens when Boydie said it's clear hinging from Saracens. And like we know, scrums are an absolute lottery in terms of giving penalties. And he said they didn't get the rewards for their dominance, but park all that because Saracens were that second half a different class. So accurate, powerful. Alex Zofsky is probably their player of the season so far, I'm going to say, in terms of how he's playing. He cut through a lovely line. Alex Goode's playing at 10. And he cuts the line with them. They were just so dominant. Jamie George was back at hooker. And I think Boydie's frustration was probably the fact with his own team, because they had 3 or 4 or 5 opportunities in the first half to score and they didn't. And you've got to credit Saracens' dogged defence. That's, they've built their success. Go back all those years to how they defended with heart and the Wolfpack thing that, I know Jim's got the Wolfpack sign behind him there. That's how they started their success story. And it's still ingrained in them now. And Boydie was frustrated with his own team. With one, you can't blame one decision on them losing the game because Saracens had way too much room in the second half, and you can only tip your slipper to that.
And Quinn's backed up their big game win over Northampton with an away win at Gloucester, didn't they?
No, they're lucky when you look at it. Really?
Do you reckon?
I think it was, lucky try at the end, wasn't it? Danny Kerr down the blind side where Gloucester had overfolded at the ball. Good win for Quinns. I genuinely thought...
Positive, James. Come on, positive.
Yeah, sorry. Fair play, Quinns. You've got a shit away kit, but your own kit's unbelievable that you played it. So there's some positivity. I was watching it actually with my lad, and he was like, they're my favourite team. I said, oh, Gloucester, your dad was captain. No, he said, Harlequins, that one. I said, right, you're grounded for a week, son. As we were watching it. So he said, who's that bloke with the Mohican that they keep showing that comes as a painter to the stadium? I said, yeah, you don't like him at all, mate. He's a horrible bloke. Fair play. You know what I mean? I've always seen Quinns and Gloucester. I don't know why, as quite similar clubs. I know it's such a weird thing to say because they're not, but I don't know. Just as in me personally, I've just seen it like that, and the fact that I've just said I hate Quinns doesn't bode well, having been former captain of Gloucester. But I thought Gloucester were going to win it. Just the way that they're playing, where it's fallen in the calendar around Christmas, New Year, the fact that Quinns are one of them teams that don't always front up. I'm awful, aren't I? I'm awful.
They're champions. What are you on about?
They are champions. And they played like a champion team because they didn't play overly well, but Esterhazen, that's it, is all I'm saying. That lad is quality.
You look at the axis of this Quinns team, your 8, Alex Donbrandt, your 9, Danny Kerr, your 10, Marcus Smith, and your 12, Esterhazen, have had a massive couple of weeks in terms of their performances. Don Brandt gets hat-trick in the big game 13. Esther Hazen gets man of the match in both games. Danny Kerr, 39 years of age, it was his birthday. He scores the winner effectively. And then Marcus Smith missed the big game 13, but we just know how classy he is. It's a proper axis, that, isn't it, in terms of a team, a spine of a team where you can hang your hat on. And then off that, you've got, Northmore, I think, is quality as well. These players are seamlessly fitting in. Liner on one wing. It's a nice mix that Quins have got at the minute, and they will be put under pressure, no doubt about it. But they've got the ability to win games and create opportunities out of nothing with the players they've got. And my God, give Esther Hazen the ball, you're 5-10 metres over the game line without even blinking.
Yeah, I've been a bit harsh on Quins, I'll be honest. It's undeniable now. As champions, we are playing some great stuff. And you mentioned the big game 13 at Twickenham. While there was no fans, there was actually no games in the URC. Well, there was a few, but no Scottish games. So basically, there was no games. And if there would have been games, there would have been no fans. And you look at Twickenham, and we talk about the growth of the game, segueing slightly, phenomenal to see. And Quins, I'm sorry. You look at the performance in that game against Northampton as well at Twickenham, Don Brandt with a hat-trick. They're a great team to watch. And son, you're ungrounded. You're ungrounded now because they could be my favourite team as well.
Positivity in 2022, James. I like it.
There you go. It's a new me, new year, new me.
Let's take a break now from the Premiership action and have a chat about something we can all get involved in this January. Doddie Aid is back for 2022, and we can have a chat now with presenter Gabby Logan, who's captaining the Barbarians team this year. Gabby, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Gabby, how do you feel being part of the what was Exiles Barbarians? You've taken my mantle as captain. Do you feel pressure because arguably one of the greatest vice captains in Scotland?
Yeah, enormous pressure, Jim. Obviously, with your incredible success rate as captain in your day job, I feel the baton is, it's a slippery baton, to be honest. It feels like it's coated in butter and lard because taking something like that on, it's very precious, and I don't want to drop it. I don't want to let anybody down. Obviously, Doddie's very, very dear to us and to Kenny and I, and so and obviously you've got the likes of yourself and Kenny and loads of other Scottish rugby legends involved in this. And so, yeah, Rob Wainwright, obviously the most persuasive man in the history of mankind. So it's very much an honour, but also pressure, pressure brings its own, privilege brings its own pressure rather, doesn't it? So.
Gabby, I should say though, because you've just put me in the same bracket as Scottish legends, obviously you're a good fellow. Kenny, thank you for that. Obviously Rob Wainwright. But when you've been doing your call to action, you've only mentioned the famous people, Jason Fox being one of them. He's like your right-hand man. I've not had one mention, so therefore I've not gained one follower off any interaction that you've given out there as captain.
I'm really sorry about that, Jim. That's Kenny's fault. He just keeps saying to me, mention Foxy, mention Foxy, mention Foxy.
He's a better captain than you anyway.
Bye, Kenny.
He's a vice captain. Kenny, we don't want you. Kenny, we don't want you.
I think it's because he's got hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. That's why he keeps making me mention him. But my next call to action, Jim, obviously, I will mention you.
But this is the thing, Gabby. You've taken over as skipper. Basically, when someone loses the armband as captain, it's because they weren't doing a good enough job. And last year, Jim Hamilton, you called him a legend then, but you haven't included him in anything. I agree with you, Gabby. He's not a legend. He's a workman. He's a workman under your control now. So in terms of your captaincy, obviously last year under Jim, it wasn't good enough. What are we expecting from your captaincy this year,
I don't know how we measure success really with this. Are we going to win as a region? Are we going to raise the most money? Are we going to have the most members? I'm not sure how, what's the chart? How are we looking at this in terms of success? And then I can define my strategy really.
Well, the devil is in the detail, and that I don't know how I've become manager and the admin around that, because that, as the lads know on here, I'm absolutely shocking in that role. All I know, Gabby, is I'm looking at the leaderboard now, and someone's out there putting the Barbarians at 3 million miles a day or something. So we're head and shoulders above. So there's a few algorithms that need fixed. But actually, Gabby, while we've got yourself on here and as high profile as you are in the media, we had Kevin Sinfield on just before Christmas. When you look at the MND community now and the people that are raising money and awareness, I mean, it's only just been brought to our mind and the podcast listeners' minds over the last couple of years because I've been talking about it. But it's phenomenal, actually, when you look at guys like Kevin Sinfield and everyone involved in the My Name's Doddie Foundation to how big it's actually grown in terms of the funds, but also the community as well.
Yeah, and then obviously that leads to incredible media coverage. The BBC Breakfast has obviously given lots and lots of time. Sports Personality has given a lot of time. So, and actually, most broadcasters aren't allowed to kind of give too much time to one. And yet, motor neuron disease, through all these very high-profile sporting connections, has been able to get a lot of attention. And I think, part of that is because it's a disease which actually, although it's supposed to be rare, it's amazing how many people know somebody who, has had somebody in their family who has suffer and die of the disease. And that is the inevitability about this disease. Because of the lack of research that's been going on for decades, there is no cure. And, and so that is the heartbreaking diagnosis that is inevitability. And so it's so cruel, and it takes away everything that kind of personifies, those people, and gives them their, for whatever they've been to in your life, that everything is stripped away from them. And so I think it's amazing actually how many people do know somebody. I did a little interview with Zoe Ball on the breakfast show ahead of Spotty, and the producer said to me, do you want to talk about any charities? And I thought, it's a perfect time to try and recruit. And so what I didn't know was the day I was speaking to Zoe Ball was the 8th anniversary of her stepdad's death from motor neuron disease. So the timing from that point of view couldn't have been better, because she was so engaged by it. But that just shows you, doesn't it? That was a complete coincidence, because I didn't know she'd had a connection with motor neuron disease. And when you chat to people, I think it is a disease that really does kind of, it really kind of breaks your heart. And people who've seen somebody suffer just want to help end it. And, and the positive side to this is that it's about movement. It's about energy. It's about exercise. It's about, January blowing out those cobwebs. So I think it's a perfect confluence, really. And, Kevin himself obviously is phenomenal what he has done. And we're not asking people to go that far, because what he does is superhuman. But everybody can kind of manage something. Like Kenny's got a thing with his best man, Robbie. They're doing at least 10 miles a day on the bike. And then today he heard Will Green, who he played with at Wasps, the kind of mileage he's putting in. So that's made Kenny more competitive. And I love this kind of, like, especially the old rugby kind of players, the old community kind of getting together and trying to, that natural competitive spirit obviously can't go, doesn't go away, does it? It's got to go somewhere. So I think it's very accessible, and hopefully people will be engaged and want to learn more about how they can continue supporting the various motor neuron disease charities.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about competitive spirit. I watched you not so long ago on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you won 64 grand for the My Name's Doddie Foundation. A couple of questions. One, was Jim Hamilton one of your phone of friends? And the second part of that, was Kenny even one of your phone of friends?
Don't be silly. No, and so many friends afterwards were like, I wasn't one of your phone of friends. And you know what I realized? If I ever do it again, you actually need normal kind of brains. I went for the highfalutin kind of, Cambridge graduate type friends, right? Actually, you need people that know stuff about daily life as well, because the question that I came unstuck on was to do with the brand of a car. You don't need a classics degree from Cambridge to know that. So, and the friend of mine who is a double first from Cambridge ended up answering a question about Paddington Bear. So I got my strategy kind of like, I'm admitting this now as captain, that day would probably not have been my best as a captain in terms of strategy. Although I was happy with the amount, especially when I heard that Harry Redknapp had not even got to a grand the day before.
I know.
I mean, that's all everybody could talk about on the studio floor. And it made me feel like, okay, well, it can't go worse than that, surely. And then I'd seen Alexander Armstrong go in the chair before me and lose money because he took a gamble. So I got to 64,000. I could have got the 125, I think, if I'd guessed, I guessed correctly when he asked me afterwards. But you just feel such an enormous responsibility for that amount of money that's going to a charity. So I didn't take it. And I got home and I was quite chuffed with myself. I came back from the studio. It's about a 3-hour drive. And I got in and Kenny and the kids were, and I said, I said, I can't tell you how much I've got, but I'm happy. So Ruben went, my son, he said, 500,000. I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, like, cut me some slack. So no, they weren't impressed, but it is horrible sitting in that chair because it's not for you. It's like, it's going to make a big difference to the charities. So, and it's also really great to be able to talk about charities on telly.
So next time you're on there, is Jim or Kenny going to be now you know what you know? Do you need a simple mind like one of those two to be a phone of friends?
Jimmy, are you pretty good on Japanese brands of car, Jim? Would you have been any use?
I'm a quarter Chinese. So, arguably you could say from Asia where there's a lot of manufacturing. Yes, I don't know if I've sold myself here, Gabby, but did you actually just say I'm a quarter Chinese in answer to a question about Japan?
Yeah, that's James.
They are very different countries, you know that.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm trying to say is cultured, well travelled, and across many genres. So I don't know if I've sold you that, but I love how Goodey's brought me into the Logan household just because we're on the same team here. But Gabby, let's talk about the Logan household then, because your son Ruben's playing a bit of rugby as well. How is your relationship with rugby? Obviously, you work on the rugby in the media, you work on the football side as well, and as well as a load of the other stuff as well, which is class. But how's your relationship with rugby in the Logan household?
I probably, because of Ruben playing, if I'm not working at the weekend, I'm watching him. So I'm either doing rugby work-wise or doing football or in the summer athletics, or I'm watching him. So actually the producer at the BBC, because the BBC only has the Six Nations, he always jokes that, and I also do the URC as well for BBC Wales, he always jokes that I watch way more rugby than him because he also does Match of the Day. So, and I know schoolboy rugby, he's under 18s at his academy, he's under sixth form at school. He's obviously very different, but it's very entertaining, schoolboy rugby. You get these you get these matches where one side scores 8 tries, the other side scores 5. You know what I mean? It's got, you see a lot of tries, and some schools are more competitive than others. But I really enjoy watching him play, because I think one of the great joys in life is watching your kids. My daughter's also sporty, and watching your kids do sport, I think, is just so enjoyable. And it's funny, you kind of I go back to football. If I do rugby one day and football the next, they're the weekends where my mind gets a little bit kind of, brain fogged, because I'd rather be on one sport for the whole weekend. Do you know what I mean? It's quite weird. I go why are they falling over? Why did they get up? I kind of find it hard not to say that when I'm watching football after I've just done rugby. But then I watch a cracking football match. Like I did Leicester Liverpool in the midweek Christmas break.
Yeah, hell of a game.
Yeah, a brilliant game. And against the, kind of nobody thought that 6-3 thrashed Leicester 2 days later would manage to put a side together that could beat Liverpool. And that's the joy of sport, isn't it? That's what I love about, doing the Six Nations, for example. Every game has something on it from the word go. The tournament is just brilliant. And we watch a lot of rugby here. You can imagine in this house, the Premiership, the Gallagher Premiership's on pretty much all the time. So it's quite a big part of our lives, I'd say.
I don't want to put any pressure on you or Kenny or Ruben, mainly you and Kenny. Ruben's obviously in the Wasps Academy, 6'5", big lump of a lad. Hopefully he's going to.
Where did he come from? Is that what you're going to ask?
No, Gabby, how dare you ask me that? I'll ask Kenny that over a beer. Now, what I'm going to say is, obviously your background is Welsh, with your father and everything like that. Kenny's as Scottish as they come. And we know Ruben's in the Wasps Academy, and he's obviously
he was born in England.
Here we go. So just end the debate now. England, Scotland, or Wales?
Well, one day when he was about 3, we used to live in London, and I was looking out the window hoping he was ready for school, and he was singing "Flower of Scotland" to the window, like he was looking at his reflection, singing, holding his hand on his heart. And I was like, oh God, I think I've lost him. And then during that Six Nations, Wales were thumping Scotland, and he was sat at the Scotland end of the sofa, and I was sat at the Wales end going, you could come and sit here if you like. And he was just like, no, and he's always been very passionate about Scotland. But it's interesting because boys in his academy are, getting calls from England, and England scouts come and watch matches and stuff like that. And so you kind of he's a bit like, he kind of sees his friends going off and getting all the England stash. And he goes, oh, that looks nice. I was like, you can't just jump because of a tracksuit, for God's sake.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
But no, he loves being Scottish. But it's funny, we've stayed with a couple of summers. We've stayed with Gregor Townsend's family when we've been up to visit Doddie, and Gregor's sons just take the mickey out of him because they'll go and play a bit of rugby or something, and they kind of call him like a plastic Scot because he's got an English accent. So when he comes home,
wrong with that.
When he comes home, he adopts this slight strange twang, where he sounds like he says "we" a bit more and things like that. But listen, that that would be a lovely dilemma for him to have. I just love him having the passion for something and the commitment, and rugby gives such an incredible attributes in terms of you've got to be dedicated to your training, you've got to work out how to get your schoolwork done, you've got to be focused, and you're a team. And he's moved from playing centre and wing at school to playing 6 for Wasps, and so it's quite an interesting seeing him kind of work out who he is, and that he's a forward. It's quite fun, and he's just enjoying it. And I think if you enjoy sport, then the other stuff can come, can't it? It's just being part of a team is really such a wonderful thing at that age. I think when you're going through all those kind of changes that teenagers do.
Yeah,
if he wants the tracksuit, he can play for England.
I should say, there's always JD Sports. You can always. He's raided all of Kenny's old. Kenny found a big, massive plastic box where Kenny had got all the jersey swaps from his career. So he's every Six Nations he kind of hands them out like sweets to his mates. His Irish mates get kind of a jump. And he had this. He had rougerie. He had a fantastically fitted rougerie shirt. It must have been towards the end of Kenny's career because the shirts just went like that, didn't they? Kind of like at one point. One season they were like humongous tents, and the next season they were like this. And he popped this rougerie shirt on. He looked pretty good in it. And Kenny couldn't get anywhere near him. So he enjoys kind of like dipping into that, and it's quite lovely actually to see their kind of shared passion and understanding of what it means, I think.
Yeah, just lastly from me, Gabby, I was talking about Scotland being the year for them with the Six Nations, and we find ourselves now in the media, but having been a player for 11 years for Scotland, saying it every single year. I know Kenny played back in the day, albeit amateur. When you look at it now, that wasn't professional then. That wasn't professional, was it?
96 when he went professional, wasn't it? He was at Wasps until 2004. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm only jesting because he does look like he's about 65. So I'm just going based on visuals. But so I know I'm only getting stuck into him. He's obviously a legend. He's on the Wall of Fame in the Scotland changing rooms. That's all I know, and I'm not. So not that I'm bitter about that. But what do you think in the Logan household around Scotland? Have we got an opportunity? There's
always enormous optimism in this household about Scotland. And last year, obviously, I think they threw it away against Wales, really. And that match, they had that match, and just I remember thinking if a crowd was there that day, that it would have been very different, because I just don't know if Lewis Rees-Zammit would have been quite as audacious with a Scotland crowd on his back, and he turned that game with 2 moments of brilliance. And I mean, we turned out he was all right, wasn't he? We didn't know much about him in the international level. Turned out he had a few of those up his sleeve. But it was, I think, one of those matches that he wondered that about a lot of the Six Nations last year, like England's performance in Cardiff as well. How much the crowds were affecting those. However, having said that, I think Scotland beating England at Twickenham, that was, definitely the crowd at Twickenham, I don't think influenced England quite as much as, say, the crowd at Scotland get on the backs of, of opposition sides. So yeah, optimism for Scotland from this lot in here, reality from the Welsh fan, me, and then Wales go and win the Six Nations, can start off a Six Nations with really low expectations. That's the way to be. And then be surprised at the end of it, instead of this, kind of perhaps unchecked optimism that they seem to start every Six Nations with.
Unchecked,
there is an incredible, I mean, the talent that's in Scotland at the moment that Greg has got at his disposal is so exciting. They've got such flair in the backs, and having all those players as well for the British and Irish Lions in the summer, more than it has been for a very, very long time, I think shows you just the the kind of talent that's there. So it would be great, wouldn't it, to kind of mix things up a little bit. It's been a while since, they got on the top of the leaderboard. Well, I can tell you exactly when it was. Because this house is when I just met Kenny, actually. So I thought, like, gosh, this is great. They win like major championships all the time. And then that was it.
Imagine what my wife thinks.
Third's like winning it now, Jim. So they might finish third. Listen, Gabby, obviously Doddie last year was a massive success. It raised over £1 million. Have you got a target in mind for this year that obviously you want to surpass that?
I think speaking to Kenny and hearing what the guys are saying, they would love to get to £1 million or more this time, and I think there's hope that they can do a little bit better than that. It'll gain, it'll only get better, and the momentum will keep going, and we'll keep talking about it. So it'd be nice to get to 1.25. I think that would be fantastic barrier to get to, and hopefully with a bit more kind of co-captaincy from Jim, his managerial.
He's not co-captain. You can't call him that. He's basically your PA, Gabby. We'll call him your PA.
All I know, I've been in cold water, Gabby. I've been in cold water. Did an unbelievable video that went viral and got about 100 likes, and I'm on the bike every day. So if you can share some of that stuff, then my profile is going to raise, and then off the back of that, the Barbarians profile will raise as well.
Maybe I need a second channel to my social media, like E4 or BBC Three, and that I can put Jim's stuff into. That's kind of like a niche audience. Maybe that's
it's called the bin.
How do people get involved?
Well, the app is the place to start. Download the app. You get it from the App Store and you join your team. Obviously, Jim and I are going to say Barbarians. You can join any team you like, though. You pay your £20, you get your snood. And if that's it, if that's all you want to do for your fundraising, fine. You could just do all your miles. We'd obviously love you to do a bit more than that, get involved in a bit of fundraising. There are ideas on there as to what you can do. But the brilliant thing is it's not just about running or cycling or, you can get your miles, your exercise kind of hours in doing whatever you want to do. So hopefully that will encourage a wider range of people, I think, to take part.
Can you give us a sort of an idea of how much of an impact just the 20 quid might make?
Yeah, I think, when you say 20 quid, you think that sounds kind of a small amount. Obviously, it comes in scale. The more money you raise, the more this money can be put to great causes. And I can tell you at the moment that money is being used very, very well. And I know the people who make the decisions on the board, the trustees, if you like, to how they kind of direct that money. And it is really important to them that it's going towards research that is at the edge of a breakthrough. They're not just putting it to kind of throwing it into the air and seeing what lands. They spend a lot of time looking at projects that are already going. They've managed to persuade a lot of different scientists to work together instead of having competing areas that are doing similar research, saying, right, okay, come together, let's really make a difference, make a breakthrough. And they've had trials for various things that they've been working on as well that have had some interesting results. So they really feel that they are getting very, very close to some really great positive news. So that money is going. And this is one of the things that Doddie from the very beginning was really keen. It's amazing to think it's 4.5 years ago since we had a big dinner for him in London. And that night, nearly £750,000 was raised. And the main aim of that night was to make sure that Doddie was okay and make sure that his family was okay. And the rugby community came together beautifully. And Kenny said to Doddie afterwards, "You've got to go with this now. This is too big. You've created some noise." And Doddie's thing was at that point, I know it's not going to change my future, but I want it to change somebody else's. I want somebody else to have a legacy from this, that we can stop other families going through this. And it would be amazing if we got to the stage where Doddie could see that was going to be a reality. And I think that is what inspires so many people who are involved to really keep going hard at this, because as I said before, it's not just famous sports people that have drawn a lot of attention to this. Obviously, there are people whose lives we don't know much about who've been dramatically and devastatingly affected by it. So hopefully, with your help and with everybody who's signing up, we will have some positive news in the next few years.
Yeah.
Gabby, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the work you're doing for Doddie 8 as well. And best of luck with Team Barbarians. But before you go, actually, Jim, did you want to tell her what your Twitter handle is, just so she knows?
Yeah. Most of the millions of listeners know, but it's at Jim Hamilton 4 on both platforms. 4 was the number that I played in Scotland unsuccessfully, but at Jim Hamilton 4. Don't worry about Foxy anymore.
I've got it tattooed. I've got it tattooed on my wrist. I'll never ever. It's indelible. Thank you very much, Jim, for your managerial prowess, and I hope I can make you proud as a co-captain. And Andy and Goodey, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, Gabby.
Thanks, Gabby.
Take care.
Top woman.
Yeah, she really is. And what I say about Gabby, I've said it a lot about her when you see her on TV. She's phenomenal at her job as a presenter. Obviously we heard then she does football, she does rugby. You wouldn't know that she bounces from one to the other with the detail that she's phenomenal as a presenter, and actually as a person even better. So absolute pleasure to have her on. And I see Kenny was desperate to try and get on in the background as well, bless him.
Yeah, he's only got 2,000 followers on Twitter. We don't want him on. Did I sound desperate? Be honest, lads.
No, not at all, mate. Not at all, mate.
No, mate. He's really cool. You sound really cool. Basically, great. She's taking your armband. She's taking your armband. You're trying to be her best friend, and you're going to basically try and get the armband back, mate. Embarrassing.
Let's round up the rest of the Premiership action now. Then Exeter, they had Christmas off and then looked good in their win over Bristol. We're expecting them to go on a run now and make it all the way to the playoffs.
Well, Jim says no. Jim says that Exeter aren't making the top 4. And right now, James, you are right. Exeter are 5th in the Prem. They're not in the top 4. So the Oracle has spoken, but we're looking forward and predicting, as we did earlier in the show, what's going to happen in 2022. The form they're in, they had some defeats where they had a few injuries, a few players missing earlier in the season. Games that you don't expect them to lose, they did lose. And they're slowly. They beat Saracens at home a few weeks back. You know, Bristol was a big game for them at home. They lost I think they lost there last year, if not the year before as well, to Bristol. And it's, you know, they were dominant, very dominant. Stuart Hogg's on absolute fire. I mean, life for him right now. I don't know what he's doing off the field, but whatever he's doing off the field is working for him because he's on fire on the field, eh, James?
He had his tags done. So he's got these.
Well, yours are B6.
Ceramics. Mine are B4 yellow, right? And that is just natural. You know, it goes back to look. Basically, I shouldn't have been smoking like the Peaky Blinders just to look cool for Instagram because it's not a cool look and it makes your teeth go yellow. And don't drink coffee and don't eat yellow snow, kids. But he's had these ceramics stuck on and he is basically the beacon. He is my LTT of 2022. Lid, tegs and toes, or tees, as known in Scotland. He looks unbelievable and he looks lean as well, Andrew. So basically, Stuart Hogg is how collectively we're going to look rolling at the end of 2022. Stuart Hogg is exactly lid, lean, tegs. He's still a hanging bit of kit, but he's a phenomenal player, as we know. Lovely lad, matured massively. He feels like he's been around. Well, I played with him, so he's been around a long time. And his performances, and he's got the bit between the teeth, and he's telling people that he's staying at Exeter. There was obviously rumours out there that he was going to leave. I'm sure there would have been opportunities to do that. He seemed settled. Scotland captain. Again, I know we are segueing because we're talking about Exeter, but we're getting high on Stuart Hogg here. Looks phenomenal, and he's back to near his best, I'd say. Because his very best, he's one of the best players in the world. Not that he hasn't been playing that well, but in terms of Stuart Hogg, if he's a 9, 10 out of 10 as a player, 2 out of 10 looks, he was operating at a 7, which I would have been unbelievably happy with. And Andrew, you would have been the same. But now he's up at 8 or 9. And going to the Six Nations, that's why Scotland are winning it, because Hogg's captain.
Yeah, sure. So you're going to change your prediction? Are they going to make the top 4 now? So that was Andy Rowe's question, basically.
I don't. Exeter, there's something not quite clicking, as we know. And I didn't say it on a whim. I didn't come on the podcast 1, season 6, and say Exeter ain't making the top 4, neither Bristol's, because I wanted a headline, even though it got a headline in the Exeter Chronicle or whatever it was. Now, people thought it might have been off the back of the Saracens thing, where I might have just done it and said it on a whim. But I could see my team, Quins, just coming through, all guns blazing. Obviously, Saracens
my team, Quins.
We picked Leicester in the top 4. I thought Sale would have made top 4. We can maybe talk about them. They're struggling a little bit this season, even though that they won against a very poor Wasps team. At the minute, who've got loads of injuries and loads of excuses. But from an Exeter point of view, there's something not quite right. And part of that is, you know, Joe Simmons hasn't been on the form that he was on before. We haven't seen as much as Sam Simmons. Luke Cowan-Dickey's been injured. Johnny Gray's just come back from an injury. Johnny Hill has just come back. Yeah, go on. Sorry, go on.
Jack Knowles just come back from. He's been out injured for a bit. He's back. Lovely kick through for O'Flaherty's try. He's one of the best players in the world for me, Jack Knowles. But as I'm saying, it's not as in Leicester. You can just see everything's in front of them. Like as in they're comfortable, they're injury free. Whereas Exeter has been a bit disjointed. And we did think with the new interpretations around the laws, which this idiot here, Jim Hamilton, said that they struggle. It's more around the accuracy stuff. And that isn't me saying that. That's a quote from Rob Baxter or something close to that. So they'll be touch and go for top 4, Exeter will. I'm not 100% convinced. If they can keep everyone fit and they can get their top dogs playing well, then of course they could be top 4. But as it stands, I'm still unsure. I'm not a no like I was before, just unsure.
Jim, you touched on Sale there. You know Alex Sanderson well. What will they be feeling as far as their top 4 chances? You had them picked for the semi-finals. How's it looking now, do you think? They're still down in 9th. Not
great, to be honest. I don't know why. You know, Alex did a great interview after his disputation. Is that a word, disputation?
Never heard of it, Jim.
Yeah, basically the big wasps. And he did a long interview with the guys on BT Sport, and he's a very engaging bloke. He's a great guy, as we know. But for whatever reason, they've not been the same. And you do wonder whether the spike that they got with Alex Sanderson going there, the big culture shift, the energy that he brought, we know, and we've spoken about it, about different teams over the years gone by on the podcast, it lasts for a little bit. You have that kind of new coach effect. And he definitely had that. I think the big thing now is around probably what they did against Wasps. They played a little bit more. They were better in contact, carrying the ball, offloads in the tackle. They become very predictable, or they did become very predictable in terms of the South African influence that they've got. Obviously, Faf de Klerk's injured. AJ McGinty's leaving as well at the end of the season. So there's a kind of few things in that sales squad that hasn't been like a Leicester where everything's going really well for them. So it was a big win against Wasps. I don't see them making top 4 at the minute from what I'm seeing. There's too many better teams out there. But you actually look at the profile of that team and the South African influence that they've got. They are a team that could make the top 4. And with Faf de Klerk coming back and Lou de Jager staying fit, the 2 South African kind of headline players that they've got. And the fact we roll into next season, not that it's about next season, the signing of George Ford, Sale are going to be there or thereabouts in the next few years. I'm just unsure this season. And their scrum and their line-out hasn't been great. It was better against Wasps. Don't be horrible. The Wasps pack isn't great, Goodey. I've not said that. I'm just saying it was a great platform for Sale to kick on going forward. But, it was a big win for them because they were under a bit of pressure. Wasps were a desperate team. And that was a game that was Sale, even if Wasps were playing well, the Sale should win because they're at home. It's a tough place to go and play, especially first game in Jan. So big win for Sale. I'm unsure, in answer to your question, whether they'll be top 4.
The other thing on it is they've lost a load of games this year, early in the season. So Sale they've played 10. They've only won 4 games. They've drawn 1 and lost 5. So they've been missing, and Jim mentioned they've been missing Faf de Klerk. AJ McGinty is so key for them. It's unbelievable. I think he got man of the match again against Wasps. Phenomenal player. He's obviously off to Bristol's, but when he doesn't play, they're a different team. They've also not really had Manu that much this year yet, have they? He's been out injured. Luke de Jager as well.
I forget he was there.
So I'm telling you now, the Premiership has got. There's going to be a lot of evolution over the next 6 months because we're round 11, right? There's 26 rounds in the Premiership, so Sale play 10 games. And it's all about momentum. Second half of the season, you go back to the way the season has been moved from many years ago to a playoff system. You only need momentum second half of the season. So a lot of the teams, you look at Gloucester now, they're 4th. Their sustainability of that, can they sustain that top 4? That's the question. Sale are coming, right? Because they're going to get all these players back fit. Bristol are going to make a run for it at some point. Wasps, they're going to get players back. And I'm not saying they're going to make a run for the top 4, but when you look at all their players out. So in the here and now, Leicester are top. And if it was the old system of first past the post wins the league, you could say that it's going to be hard for Leicester to lose the league. But the way that it is with playoffs, especially this season now with bye weeks, an extended 13-team league, 26 rounds, but you're playing 24 games. So we're not even halfway through the season. And in reality, Sale, I could quite comfortably see Sale towards the back end of the season with all those boys fit. They don't lose too many to the Six Nations. I know they're going to lose Curry, but they've basically got his twin brother who's equally as good to come in. All the South African boys are going to be there for the rest of the year. Van Rensburg in the centre, he's an absolute fucking monster. Thank God I never had to play against him or Esther Hazen or anyone like that because they're just hard, aren't they? And Sale will be back. Don't you worry about it. Whether they make top 4, they'll be there or thereabouts towards the end of the season, I think.
Well, before we talk about the URC, maybe a positive for Bath. They've got a new boss.
Oh, I was going to say their game got cancelled against London Irish. So the positive is they get 2 points. I thought that's what you're going to say. You're right.
There we go.
You say that. There you go.
It's effectively a draw, isn't it? They haven't won a game all year, but they've now drawn one through COVID. So I shouldn't joke about that. That's horrible, James. Why have you said that? Hopefully everyone at Bath is okay. The game was called off because of the COVID impact. But yeah, Van Graham next year. Again, you're looking at next year. It's that squad's got there's a lot of work to do behind the scenes on that squad. I think there is some good young players there. They hung their hat on Cipriani. They lost Prieston last year. They hung their hat on Cipriani as the 10 to lead them, and we haven't seen much of that, are we, James?
Well, they're losing their second best player as well.
Falatau. Anthony Watson.
Best player then. There you go. So we've just named 2 of their best players. Felipe Falatau's been injured and hasn't played a lot, but he's one of their best players. Anthony Watson with Sam Underhill, 2 best players, and you're losing one of them. The rumour is to London Irish. So they've got a lot of building to do, unfortunately, Bath. There's a lot of things wrong at that club, clearly. we're only going based on what we can see. When you look at the quality they've got in terms of players, the money that they've got as a club, it's going to be a while until they come back. But hey, look at Leicester. I still don't think they're doing it the right way in terms of look what Leicester did in terms of rebuilding, but look what Quins did, and Quins won the league. So they know that something needs to be fixed, and like Goodey said, they got 2 points. So there's some positivity for you.
But Van Graham, I think, is, obviously moving from Munster. You're going to need to see how Munster have got on over the last 2 weeks since that news has gone. They haven't performed that well. So there's obviously a negative. He's a good coach, and from everything you hear about him, hopefully he'll have a big impact for them if they can navigate their way through the rest of the season and not be too far behind everyone by the time he gets there.
Well, it's been a very positive podcast, or has it? Let's try and keep things positive. Jim, the URC, how was it, mate?
Is it possible to be positive about the URC at the minute, James?
Well, it depends how you look at it. If you look at it from my perspective, I've got to spend more time with the family.
I know you wanted to be out working, so that's a negative.
I got the call on the 27th, and I had a feeling the Glasgow-Edinburgh game weren't going ahead. I just kind of, with everything that was happening and unfolded, and lo and behold, as I've just done the hair, I've put the magic dust in the hair, and I've trimmed the eyebrows, it gets called. It gets called off. So, obviously it's not something to joke about, and we're trying to take light humour out of the situation we find ourselves in. We're obviously in a pretty shit time again at the minute. We don't know how it's going to unfold. Look, let's try and stay positive. Connacht beat Munster in the URC. That was a game that went ahead. But when you look
10-8. 10-8 as well, Jim. High scorer.
Absolutely. Classic. Loads of scraps happening. Bit of old school rugby. But when you look at it for all the good in the URC, and we've got to state facts and we've got to say it how it is, the rebrand of the league, as good as it is impossible at the minute. Not impossible, but close to impossible to have any kind of momentum. We saw that at the back end of last season where the Rainbow Cup was played. The South African teams couldn't get into the tournament. We saw at the beginning of this season, they did get into the tournament. The games were then scheduled for their home games to be played in Italy, but then they were scheduled to be in South Africa. They didn't go ahead. And we saw everything that happened with Munster, Cardiff and Scarlets. They were caught in South Africa before Christmas and the shitstorm that was involved in that. And you could kind of feel that something was going to happen around this period. And lo and behold, it has. There's been a load of cancellations, postponements, how you look at it. And it's a difficult time, out of all the leagues, the URC, because of the nature of the travel, because there's teams in Italy, because of the South African franchises that are in, because of the Wales, Ireland, Scotland, the rules are different as well. So I don't really know how it's going to unfold. I said that a lot last year. We said it a lot. Who knows? But unfortunately, the URC, imagine being involved in the administration around that and Premier Sports and people trying to put a decent product out there. It is not impossible, but close to impossible. And it's a real shame. We hope everyone gets better who's involved. But you just wonder now, there's a game this weekend, or there's a number of games, there might be just one game, before we get into Europe. Are these games going to be replayed? Because they've not been cancelled, they've been postponed. So we'll have to just see how it unfolds. But I do feel for the URC because the product has grown massively under this new rebrand, but just logistically and because of COVID, it's not managed to take off and unfold how we wanted it to.
Yeah, I will give you one positive though, Jim. And you mentioned it in there around what happened with the Scarlets and Cardiff and Munster and everything over just pre-Christmas around the travel to South Africa and the URC games being canned and pushed back and everything. And then obviously the knock-on effect with coming back to quarantine and being quarantined over there in South Africa as well. The Scarlets, they bounced back. They played a game. They beat the Ospreys. Johnny McNichol scores a try with a couple of minutes to go to win it for them. And there's some New Year's cheer for the Scarlets fans because it must have been, you can't even imagine, can you? We're all sat here now and you don't want to be too negative, but you cannot imagine how hard it was for all those players, coaches and everything, quarantining in South Africa, catching COVID, obviously, first and foremost, quarantining in South Africa, then coming back eventually and quarantining in the UK. Some of them were in Belfast, they were getting donuts sent to them, the Scarlets boys, by a friend of the show, Darren Cave, etc. It's just, you cannot, we've all had tough times. They've had it proper tough, haven't they? So fair play to the Scarlets team, getting a win over the Ospreys at death there. And it's a little bit of good news. How they're going to rejig all the games, you've got some of the coaches coming out and saying they don't want to do it over the Six Nations period because that'll affect the quality and players missing, etc. But it's obviously what the Premiership do. They just do it there and then. 4 points to one team, 2 points to the other team. And unfortunately, with the logistical issue of the URC, they haven't got anything in place yet, but they're going to have to be some big decisions made, aren't they?
Well, let's finish things off then with the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, fair few bits of good over the weekend. Claremont, we've mentioned them in the bad a couple of times. They're not been performing that well. They beat Toulouse 16-13 over in the top 14. So a good win for them. Camille Lopez with a neat little drop goal as well in that game. Cast, they're going to get a mention in the good this week. They recovered from 23 points to 3 down at home after 24 minutes. To beat La Rochelle 31-30. So a tip of the slipper to those boys. Connacht, we've just mentioned that they're around the URC. They got a massive victory, and I say massive victory, not in terms of scoreline, but a massive local derby victory over Munster, 10-8 in Galway, thanks to Bundyaki's try. So well done to the Connacht boys. It wasn't a particularly good game, but hey, they're taking the points home with them, aren't they, Jim?
Well, we're here, yes.
In the wind. What else was good? Ron Ackerman try on his 100th appearance with Gloucester.
Finish
to him. Yeah, it was. And on notable matches in terms of how many you played, Mike Brown, 250 Premiership games at the weekend. You don't want to talk about Newcastle's performance, but tip the slip to Mike Brown, 250 Premiership games is some achievement. But who gets the good? Saracens. They're going to get a mention, James.
Oh, I thought you were going to give it to them. You were going to totally redeem yourself like you did with Gloucester, but you're not quite there with Gloucester or Saracens. You're a long way from Saracens. What you got? Hit me.
Well, they had 2 wins over the festive period as well, so they get a mention in the good. Leicester are going to get a mention in the good as ever. I mean, they just keep winning, don't they? The Bristol victory, and then a spanking of my old club, another one of my old clubs, Newcastle. So they've still got 100% record and 9 points clear at the top. But the good this week is going to go to one man. He inspired his team. He inspired Jim Hamilton's team to 2 victories with a man of the match performance against Northampton Saints in Big Game 13 and a man of the match performance against Jim's other old club, Gloucester. Andre Esterhazen, you're going to get the good this week. Phenomenal player in the form of his life. Pay him some more. Extend his contract. That is a South African bit of meat that is going well in your Harlequins team, James Hamilton.
Cannot argue with that. Come on, the Coy twins, quins, what are they called? Come on, you twins.
There we go. The bad, a few bits of bad. Perpignan and Biarritz, both the newly promoted teams in the top 14, lost both their games over the festive period and are now the bottom 2 in the top 14s. Things are looking pretty difficult for them. And also, I've got to mention Brive, my old team. They're down there as well. So we've got Perpignan and Biarritz in 14th and 13th, and Brive haven't had a good start to the season.
They're in 12th.
Yeah, they're in 12th. They got dominated by Pau over in France at the weekend, so not good for them. Munster, they're going to get mentioned in the bad this week. They weren't great against Cast in the Champions Cup, although they did get the victory. And then they lost to Connacht. But that's all after Johan van Graan announced he was leaving, as well as Stephen Larkham. He's leaving as well. Everyone's leaving. Graham Rowntree for head coach, DOR. Give Wig the job.
Well, if they can't get Paul O'Connell or Ronan O'Gara, is there no one left? Well, there is. You've got Wiggs Billy, mate, and he'll take it.
There we go. Big shout out to him as well, because he was one of the few boys that was stuck over in South Africa. So yeah, it's been pretty tough for Munster over the last few weeks. And they didn't really fire a shot against Connacht, so they get a mention in the bag. The URC in general having loads of games cancelled. That's not good news. So that gets a mention in the bad over Christmas and New Year. But the bad this week, it's going to go to Bath again, Jim. Suffered their biggest defeat ever at home to their bitter rivals, Gloucester, just before Christmas. And then they've obviously got COVID cases as well. So festive cheer and all that, but you just got to give Bath the bad, haven't you? Yeah, the ugly this week, Blake Ferguson has just swapped over from the NRL Rugby League, making his way in Rugby Union over to Tokyo to play for Michael Checker's NEC Green Rockets. And he's been arrested in Tokyo for possession of cocaine. What are you thinking, Blake Ferguson? He's had his contract torn up. He's been sacked. Obviously, the police are involved. So the ugly this week goes to Blake Ferguson. What should he have done, Jim?
Well, the positive man in me says you take the good out of the situation, and thank God, if there is one, that he wasn't in Singapore because you get your arms cut off. So that's all I'm thinking. I'm thinking the new me is taking a positive out of a negative situation here. So obviously not great, but thank God you weren't in Singapore. That's what I'm leaving out of this.
And you guys have got a couple of shout outs to finish off with, don't you?
Yeah, got a big shout out to the Cayman Islands. Lovely spot, apparently. But the rugby team there, they all listen to the pod. They travelled to play Mexico recently. It was the first game between them in 29 months since the COVID outbreak. The last time they played each other was in the Americas Rugby Challenge in 2019. So the Cayman Islands, we are, even though I've not been there before, we're back up and running.
Let's get out to the Cayman Islands and do a session. Yeah, you can also change your nationality, Jim. So should we have a run out for the Cayman Islands? I don't recommend.
Where is it? Where is the Cayman Islands? Is it like Barbados, like the Caribbean, or is it Norway?
It's a tax haven over that way. Yeah, no problem.
That way.
There we go. Yeah, a massive shout out to my old school that I coached, Berkhamsted Rugby School. Their first 15, they went undefeated this season and were winners of the 2021 Schools Daily Mail Trophy. So a massive well done to Ben Marnie, who's the head coach there, and all the boys there at Berkhamsted School. They've obviously gone on an upward trajectory since I stopped coaching them, James.
Well done to yourself then, Andrew. See, we just put ourselves at the forefront. But no, well done to everyone at Berkhamsted. Lastly, a big shout out to Miles. Yeah, a big shout out also to Miles, who plays rugby for a school in Canterbury in Kent. He's been diagnosed with bone cancer in his leg. So we wish him a recovery. And a big shout out from all of us here on the Rugby Pod. So get well soon, Miles.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Goodey. Thanks, producer Tristan. And thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and make sure you've subscribed on Spotify as well.
Rugby Spod.
Spotted pod.